So here we are again tonight, guys. Just another night on the mill, another night on the barn. I'm talking kind of quietly because I'm doing this voiceover, sitting in the recliner while everybody else in the house is asleep. It's about midnight here. So anyway, we got another log on the mill tonight. Got it debarked. I got a little bit lazy in the debarking and left some of the bark on, and then I just couldn't take it. Got it on the mill and decided to finish debarking most of it wherever the blade was going to go. I need to build something. Wood-Mizer has a neat debarking tool that goes on the mill. You know, it goes in front of the blade. I think I can make something pretty easily with that. I have a couple ideas. I'll run them by. Unfortunately, right now with working on the project, all other kind of projects and fabricating stuff's on hold. So here again, we're just using the level to lay out the log. You can use your framing square and level the framing square. I'm finding that just using my 4 foot level is much easier. 2 footer would probably be even easier to handle, but this works out pretty well. So we're laying out an 8x8. Again, I could probably just about get a 10x10 out of this. This small end on this was 14 inches, pretty well all the way around, pretty symmetrical log. We had a little bit of a crown towards the other end, nothing like on the log that we did last night, but it's alright, or on the last video for you guys. So anyway, we just keep laying it out. You guys can see, going to be able to get some 2x8s out of this, couple of them. Not as many as I was hoping, just because the wane was just a little bit too much, especially on this first one we laid out. But another thing, a little trick I've learned building these logs. Now the kerf on your band blade is 1/8 of an inch, and what you can do, how I do it when I'm laying these out to get my other boards. Now I put my 8x8 right at the exact measurements. Let's say I want a 2-inch board past the 8x8. I'll measure up 2 1/8 above the line for the 8x8, and what that does for me, I can set my blade up to that mark on the log, and I just take my top cutter and line it up with that mark, and it's pretty well perfect every time. It saves me from bending down, trying to look underneath of the blade and line it up. I don't use the gauge, I don't use the ruler on the mill very often. I'll do it if I'm cutting off just a bunch of 1x material, 4/4 or 2/4, 5/4, whatever it is. But I do not use the ruler portion of it, because I've noticed that unless you're looking at that thing exactly the same every time, it's not very accurate. Now, there are some better ones out there. This is a manual mill all the way. I mean, there's no bells and whistles on it. So you guys see I'm rolling these logs by hand, doing the toe kick by hand, all that good stuff, when I'm trying to get the taper out of the log. But I wouldn't trade it for anything at the time. I mean, this mill's definitely earned its keep. I mean, you guys have seen video after video. I tell you what, I wish I'd been shooting videos when we first started doing this, because the logs I was milling were twice the size of the ones I have on there right now. I mean, I was milling 36-inch logs. I mean, I had some logs on there where I had to trim off the sides a little bit with a chainsaw just to get it to clear the throat of the mill. But I tell you what, it's handled it. And those first logs I was milling them. They were 22 feet long when I put them on the mill. Now, a little bit of maintenance note when you're with this sawmill, I grease it every couple times out. I release the tension on the blade every night when I'm done using it, because you do have rubber V-belts that sit in the grooves of the pulleys that actually run the blade, the band wheels. So they call it a tire on the band wheel. If you don't release the tension on that blade every day you're done using it, you could create flat spots, and then you're going to end up needing to get new tires on there. They actually have a crown on them, and when you're adjusting the tracking on your mill, which fortunately the tracking was beautiful on this mill right from Hudson. I didn't have to do anything with it. It was actually nice and square to the bunks and everything else. I've since adjusted, as I've used it more and more. So, certain things get out of whack a little bit. And the other thing I need to do with this is put a different blade lube tank on it. There's a metal one on there. It's actually part of the frame of the mill. It's getting pretty rusty inside of it. And then you can see the discoloration on that little vinyl tube. That's from rust running through it. So we kind of watch that because in the wintertime, I use windshield washer fluid as my blade lube because it doesn't freeze. Right now, I'm just using a pine sol and water mix. There's a lot of pitch in these logs, so it's not too bad, but it's always exciting when you take the first cut off the top of the log. It's really hard to eyeball the crown exactly until you take that first cut off. I mean, you can get a good idea after a while, but it's really kind of hard to tell. Now I have piles of flitch, which is pieces like that all over the place. I actually I'm going to have to take the time and start cutting them up because I'll just dry them out and throw them in the wood stove in the house. It's not ideal firewood, but it burns and it makes heat. I just have to clean my chimney just a little bit more after using it. Boy, it's hard to try to be quiet here, talk quietly I do my voiceover with a cell phone. And as I'm editing here, I'm just sitting here watching the footage and trying to narrate a little bit what we're doing. And kind of entertaining. It's different, It's quite different trying to talk after the fact. I'm used to doing it while we're shooting. It's a little bit easier that way because I'm right into it at the time. And if you look in the background past those band blades I have hanging, you see that wind's just a going tonight. It's that time of year here in the North Country. Temperatures swinging all over the place. I started out tonight milling with a coat. And as you can see, I ended up in a short sleeve t-shirt in November, which is very odd for us, but it's becoming more normal the last few years. Now this cut here, I was not actually able to get a 2x8 out of it. There was just too much wane in the top of it. And I was hoping to get a usable floorboard out of it, but it'll end up being like a 1x6. I'll use it for a filler strip somewhere. And that's another thing. I have to go through and stack all my lumber, sticker it all, because it's getting to be about that. In the last few nights we've done some milling here, and you got to get those stacked before they warp. I tell you, it never gets old watching the sawdust come off of this machine. It is fun. I know Jim Stew, one of our viewers, recommended putting a 5-gallon pail under it, and that would work. That would work fine if the mill sat taller. The mill actually is too low to the ground to where even at the height I have it right now, I wouldn't be able to quite get a 5-gallon pail under it. It's not a big deal though to sweep it up. I tell you, in some future videos when this project's done, you guys are going to hopefully enjoy the sawdust burner build we've got going. I started it last winter. Then once I was able to get back onto the barn, it's in my little shop. Kind of got left to that point. But that'll be a fun one. You guys will probably be interested in that, especially if you're woodworkers and you have an overabundance of sawdust. They actually work really well. I've watched a few videos over the years on it, and at the point where decided I just had to have one. So that's the way it goes. It's starting to get a little tired here and there. Noticing as the weeks go on, these 1, 2 in the morning sessions and working out there till 11 o'clock at night and then coming in to edit and stuff like that starts to take a toll. I'm probably get to the point here soon where I'm probably going to take a couple nights and try to go to bed early, even though that never works out. look outside of the window and look at the project, and I always end up getting out there if I'm awake and the weather's good enough where I can do it. I'm usually out there, but it'll be a lot nicer when we're dried in, and I'm really looking forward to the future of this shop. I'm going to be able to hopefully make some really good stuff for you guys and start working on some money-making projects out of it. So we're going to keep milling here. I'm going to throw it into time lapse, and I'll see you guys at the end of the time lapse.